Today, I'll be clarifying the best DPS perks to pick for solo carry potential, explaining why some are utter trash and others may be better given certain circumstances. The first sub-role we'll be covering is Specialist. Torbjorn. Minor perks. Hammer time versus Preheated. Hammer time. Move 20% faster while Forge Hammer is equipped. Preheated. Molten Core activates Overload. Unless you feel like playing Valorant, pick Preheated as it results in a higher survivability when ulting, as well as higher uptime overall, allowing you to use Overload, pop ultimate, and save Overload again until after ulting, and pop it again for 3 instances of Overload in rapid succession, similar to Ramantra's form before popping ultimate, form while you're ulting, and form after you ult. Major perks. Anchor Bolts versus Overloaded Turret. Anchor Bolts. Deployed turret's throw range is increased by 50%, and it can now attach to walls and ceilings. Overloaded Turret. Overload upgrades your turret for 5 seconds, increasing its health and damage. You should always just pick Anchor Bolts. It results in better angles that make it harder to destroy, and more of a distraction that people have to really think about. Overload Turret only really works when they aren't able to get away from your turret, but it doesn't provide as much consistent value as Anchor Bolts. Symmetra. Minor perks. Sentry Capacity versus Perfect Alignment. Sentry Capacity. Sentry turret gains an additional charge. Perfect Alignment. Increase the range of photon projector's primary fire by 20%. In theory, Perfect Alignment would be the better perk, but reality shows that it barely increases her beam range. Sentry Capacity, however, increases her DPS with an extra turret, and makes TP bombs potentially more consistent. Major perks. Hovering Barrier versus Shield Battery. Hovering Barrier. Teleporter gains the option to create a forward-moving barrier instead. Pressing ability 2, again, slows down the barrier's movement. Shield Battery. Symmetra regenerates 20 shields per second while within 10 meters of her teleporter. Unless you feel like reliving Overwatch Overwatch original release, then pick the useful perk that generates shield health when near your teleporter, allowing for higher sustain during an engagement, and self-sustain just in general. Soldier 76. Minor perks. Helix Propulsion. Helix Rocket's projectile speed is increased by 50%. Tactical Salvo. During Tactical Visor, Helix Rocket's cooldown is reduced by 80% and no longer interrupts firing heavy pulse rifle. Pick Helix Propulsion on far range maps, otherwise you should pick Tactical Salvo for its increased value during Visor, which is normally a pretty useless ultimate. Major perks. Agility Training versus Stim Pack. Agility Training. Sprint speed is increased by 20% and reload can be performed while sprint is active. Stim Pack. Stim Pack replaces Biotic Field. On use, Soldier 76 heals for 30 health per second and gains 20% increased attack speed for 5 seconds. In most instances, you should pick Stim Pack, unless you find yourself on a map or against a comp where you need to rotate even more often than usual. An example of a map would be any Flashpoint map. May. Minor perks. Skating Rink versus Glacial Propulsion. Skating Rink. Allies within Blizzard gain 25% increased movement speed and heal for 50 health per second. Glacial Propulsion. Double jumping creates a small ice pillar that launches Mei into the air. Pick Glacial Propulsion in most instances, as Mei in general lacks any sort of mobility, aside from using her wall, which is far more useful in zoning off enemies mid-fight than for the limited mobility it provides. The only time you'd pick Skating Rink is if you're playing against a clumped together team, or playing on a map that promotes clumping together in general. Major perks. Deep Freeze versus Cryo Storm. Deep Freeze. Continuously hitting enemies with primary fire freezes them for a short time. Cryo Storm. Cryo Freeze slows and deals 70 damage per second to nearby enemies. Cryo Storm is almost always the better pick, as it not only regens your health, but allows you to finish targets you otherwise couldn't, while Deep Freeze is usually only useful if you're dealing with tanks that are consistently walking you down. Junkrat. Minor perks. Mine Recycling versus Nitro Boost. Mine Recycling. Killing blows with Concussion Mine restore 1 charge. Nitro Boost. During Riptire, use left shift, or the equivalent console option, to gain a quick boost of speed. Doing so reduces Riptire's damage by 50%. Get Nitro Boost if you find it difficult to utilize your tire with the terrain to secure kills, such as on maps with long open sight lines, where you can't use cover with your tire. Mine Recycling. Get this perk in every other instance, as it ensures you can fully commit to a kill and get out with the extra Concussion Mine. It's useful in other cases as well, but this use case is the most consistent. Major perks. Frag Cannon versus Bomb Voyage. Frag Cannon. Frag launcher's projectile speed is increased by 25%. Bon Voyage. After launching with Concussion Mine, Junkrat gains 35% increased attack speed for 3 seconds. Get Frag Cannon on far sightline maps for the extra consistency, but otherwise, you should get Bon Voyage. Although it's not usually very effective, it's better than not having it at all, and allows you to keep the extra ammo the other perk takes away. Next up, Bastion. Minor perks. Configuration Reload versus Armored Artillery. Configuration Reload. Refresh the cooldown of A36 Tactical Grenade when changing configurations. Armored Artillery. Artillery grants 300 temporary overhealth. In most cases, you should pick Configuration Reload. This is because of the higher damage potential and mobility options, aka rollout potential. Only pick Armored Artillery if you're finding yourself unable to survive in Bastion's ultimate, or needing overhealth to survive specific engagements. Using his ultimate purely for damage mitigation and forcing off enemies from killing you and or your team, turning it into a self-defensive ultimate. Major perks. Lindholm Explosives versus Self-Repair. Lindholm Explosives. Assault weapon slowly fires explosive shells instead of rotary cannon. Self-Repair. Press left shift or the equivalent console option to rapidly heal yourself. Lindholm Explosives. Pick this perk if you find that you need more mobility to engage on targets and or you need to capitalize on shorter time intervals where players are playing in spaces in which they can take damage. Also, just keep in mind, closer quarters maps make his projectiles more consistent, which favors this perk. So only pick Self-Repair if you need to keep the rotary cannon formed so you can consistently pressure down targets that are less mobile on long sightline maps. Next up, Emre. Minor perks. Suppressive Security versus Enhanced Agility. Suppressive Security. Override protocols light rounds slow enemies by 30% for 1 second. Enhanced Agility. Siphon Blaster's movement speed bonus is increased by 20% while not firing. Pick Enhanced Agility if you can take advantage of the mobility to off-angle or rotate away from a dangerous area against close-range heroes. Go for Suppressive Security if you don't need that mobility, aka if you're playing into poke on a long sightline map where you can off-angle by just simply taking 2 steps to the left or right. It allows you to slow an enemy's rotation with light rounds, making your large shots more consistent. It also allows your team to capitalize on the slow targets, if they're paying attention, that is. Major perks. Heatsink versus Cyber Adhesion. Heatsink. Direct hits with Siphon Blaster refund heat and increase its duration by 0.1 seconds. Cyber Adhesion. Cyber Frag now sticks on contact, dealing 40 extra damage to stuck enemies. You should get Cyber Adhesion a majority of the time, as it makes his limited burst damage much more consistent. It also does more damage if you stick the nade on the player, changing breakpoints. Really only go for Heatsink if you're playing into dive, or a tank is consistently walking you down. In those cases, this perk allows you to both pressure off an enemy and sustain through lifesteal long enough to force cooldowns, get out, and even finish off a target. But if you're rotating correctly throughout the match, you honestly shouldn't need it, and would get far more value out of the consistency of Cyber Adhesion. The next sub-role we'll be covering is Recon. Starting off with Pharah. Minor perks. Drift Thrusters versus Helix Shields. Drift Thrusters. Pharah can move while Barrage is active. Helix Shields. Convert 125 health to shields. Direct hits with the rocket launcher triggers passive shield regeneration. Pick Drift Thrusters by default as it makes her inconsistent ultimate more reliable, allowing you to move towards targets during its use. It also increases your chances of surviving during ult, as you aren't stuck in place, exposed to the world for every enemy to dink you in the forehead. You should only pick Helix Shields if you find yourself struggling to sustain, whether that's because you lack a mercy pocket, or supports that can actually heal you, or because you're on a map that makes it difficult for you to play cover consistently while still gaining value. Major perks. Fuel Stores versus Rocket Salvo. Fuel Stores. Jet Dash grants 50% fuel. Maximum overfuel is increased by 100%. Rocket Salvo. After using a movement ability, the next primary fire shoots 2 spiraling mini rockets, each dealing 40 damage. You should just pick Rocket Salvo. The increased damage when firing after using a movement ability means you can surprise players and make your next shot do up to 200 damage if you direct hit with the 2 mini rockets and her primary. Even if you don't direct a target, this increased burst damage will result in more value than being able to stay in the sky for longer, in most instances. Sombra. Minor perks. Encrypted Upload versus Control-Alt-Escape. Encrypted Upload. Hack can be used while invisible. Successful hacks increase the duration of stealth by 3 seconds. Control-Alt-Escape. Teleporting with Translocator while below half health initiates passive health regeneration. Pick Control-Alt-Escape as it allows you to self-sustain without relying on health packs directly, meaning you get to re-engage sooner, increasing your overall uptime and therefore carry potential. Major perks. High Speed Bandwidth versus Viral Replication. High Speed Bandwidth. Hacked health packs grant allies 25% movement speed and 50 overhealth for 4 seconds. Viral Replication. Hitting a hacked enemy with virus spreads virus to enemies within 8 meters. Pick Viral Replication in most instances. This will be the better perk as it allows for AoE damage. Only pick high speed bandwidth when you have a high mobility dive oriented team, for example Tracer, Venture Ball, etc., against teams with high mobility themselves. Next up, Freja. Minor perks. Relentless Barrage versus Momentum Boost. Relentless Barrage. Direct hits with take aim refund 8 automatic bolt ammo. Momentum Boost. Quick dash distance is increased by 20%. I'd recommend picking Relentless Barrage on maps with long sightlines where the horizontal dash increase isn't as much of an advantage. If you do find yourself on a map that can take advantage of the 20% distance increase though, then I'd recommend it over Relentless Barrage in that case. Major perks. Aerial Recovery versus Rising Winds. Aerial Recovery. After using Updraft, heal for 30 health per second until Freja touches the ground. Rising Winds. Updraft grants an additional charge but has 20% reduced height. I'd recommend picking Rising Winds in most cases, as the second charge is far more useful than a single use that's 20% higher. This is because it allows you to utilize a sudden burst of mobility more often, increasing your uptime through more consistent burst mobility. Only pick Aerial Recovery if you find yourself needing to take wide angles away from your support's LOS consistently in order to win. Next up, Echo. Minor perks. Focused Rush versus Partial Scan. Focused Rush. Focused Beam's range is increased by 4 meters, and movement speed is increased by 10% when active. Partial Scan. Duplicate starts with 50% of its ultimate charge. I'd recommend picking Focus Rush every single time. The increased range and movement speed means you'll consistently gain more value out of Focus Beam throughout a match, in comparison to what is essentially a more advanced Diva Bomb, but for Echo. Major perks. Full Salvo versus High Beams. Full Salvo. Sticky bombs fire 50% more projectiles. High Beams. Focusing beam eliminations reset flight's cooldown. I'd recommend picking Full Salvo in most use cases, as it changes breakpoints and it increases the likelihood of allowing you to use your deadly laser. In comparison, High Beams is really only useful situationally. While Full Salvo consistently provides value through higher damage, High Beams only provides value if you're able to secure an elimination credit with Focusing Beam. And even then, it's mostly only useful as an escape tool. If you're enjoying the video so far, and you have an opinion in regards to our choices for the DPS perks, please let us know below, but with that being said, back to the video. The next sub-role we'll be covering is Flanker. Venture. Minor perks. Deep Burrow versus Excavation Exhilaration. Deep Burrow. Drill dash distance is 50% longer while burrowing. Excavation Exhilaration. While Tectonic Shock is active, cooldowns refresh 300% faster. Pick Excavation in most instances as it allows for more opportunities to escape, engage, and confirm kills. Only pick Deep Burrow if you find yourself in need of the extra distance for consistent safe disengagements. Major perks. Smart Extender versus Covered in Dirt. Smart Extender. Empower Smart Excavator with E to increase its maximum projectile range by 100% for 4 seconds. Covered in Dirt. Dealing damage with Clobber grants up to 30 Explorer's Resolve shields. Pick Smart Extender, as it takes away Venture's main weakness, range, allowing you to poke targets from a distance. Only pick Covered in Dirt if you find yourself unable to survive engagements consistently. Vendetta. Minor perks. Siphoning Strike versus Extra Edge. Siphoning Strike. Overhead strikes gain 30% lifesteal. Extra Edge. Projected edge costs 25% less energy. Always pick Siphoning Strike, as it allows you to sustain during an engagement more consistently, while Extra Edge only allows for more of her inconsistent poke ability. Major perks. Relentless versus Raging Storm. Relentless. Onslaught can stack 3 ward times, increasing attack speed by 5% and movement speed by 4% per stack. Raging Storm. Whirlwind Dash continues to spin, hitting 3 more times for 35 damage in a wide area. Pick Relentless as it allows for higher damage output on engagements, and the movement speed means you can chase down targets, while Raging Storm only adds some more damage to an already inconsistent ability, so it's less valuable unless you find yourself unable to stack Onslaught. Tracer. Minor perks. Chronal Dash versus Kinetic Reload. Chronal Dash. Blink distance increased by 20%. Kinetic Reload. Melee hits grant 20 ammo. Chronal Dash. If you don't play Tracer as much, pick this perk by default, that being Chronal Dash, as it allows you to engage from a further distance and escape to cover that's normally out of reach. If you consistently play Tracer, and are used to her blink distance, and find that you don't get as much value out of the extra blink distance, I'd recommend picking Kinetic Reload, as the 20 extra ammo can really come in clutch when you really need to confirm a kill. Major perks. Blink Packs versus Quantum Entanglement. Blink Packs. Health packs restore 1 blink charge. Quantum Entanglement. Recall grants 50 over health and 20 health that decays over time. Blink Packs. Always pick Blink packs as it restores Tracer's second most vital cooldown and results in a higher rate of survivability, while Quantum Entanglement is really situational at best and oftentimes doesn't get as much value as the extra 1 Blink charge. Reaper, minor perks. Lingering Wraith versus Soul Reaving. Lingering Wraith. Leaving Wraith form grants 40% movement speed for 2 seconds. Soul Reaving. Collect soul globes from dead enemies to restore 50 health. Always pick Lingering Wraith. Soul Reaving is rarely, if ever, useful, and he already has lifesteal, while Lingering Wraith increases your movement speed for 2 seconds, meaning that you can dodge shots more consistently, and more often than not, confirm kills you otherwise would find difficulty confirming. Major perks. Dire Triggers versus Shadow Blink. Dire Triggers. Use right mouse button or right trigger to fire a volley with long range accuracy from both Hellfire shotguns. Shadow Blink. Shadow Step's cast time and cooldown are 25% faster, but the range is reduced by 25%. Unless you feel like playing like Poke Reaper, you should always pick Shadow Blink. This is because it makes engaging and surprising targets much more consistent, which is what Reaper relies on. So having that 25% reduced cast time really comes in clutch in a lot of instances. Next up, Genji. Minor perks. Swift Cuts versus Dragon's Thirst. Swift Cuts. Quick melee reduces the cooldown of Swift Strike by 3 seconds. Dragon's Thirst. Dragon Blade swings gain 30% lifesteal. If you're confident with Genji's mechanics and aren't in need of the extra lifesteal on Blade, I'd recommend Swift Cuts most of the time. Dragon's Thirst is preferable though if you cannot get any value out of Blade without self-sustain, aka lifesteal. Major perks. Blade Twisting versus Meditation. Blade Twisting. Swift Strike deals 25 additional damage over time if the enemy is below half health. Meditation. Regenerate 35 health per second while Deflect is active. I'd recommend picking Blade Twisting by default due to its change in breakpoints, but if you do find yourself unable to sustain, and it's not because of poor decisioning and decision making, then I will say Meditation can provide you with enough self-sustain to get you out of difficult spots, allowing you to re-engage sooner for overall greater uptime. Next up, Anran. Minor perks. Smolder versus Heatsink. Smolder. Ignited enemies burn 1.5 seconds longer. Heat Shield. Gain 50 overhealth for each enemy ignited by your ultimate. For Anran's minor perks, you should really lean towards Heat Shield. Heat Shield allows you to sustain post-ultimate and follow up on the initial impact damage to confirm your elims. So in reality, it's providing you with higher uptime potential, as long as you land your ultimate and can land your shots. You should really only pick Smolder if you're against high HP characters and brawly style comps, such as Bastion, Reaper, Mei, since you have a longer chance to proc your crit and force cooldowns. Major perks. Short Fuse versus Hungering Blaze. Short Fuse. Impacting an enemy with Inferno Rush reduces its cooldown by 1.5 seconds. Hungering Blaze. Heal 50 health for each enemy hit by Dancing Blaze. Go for Hungering Blaze. That self-sustain will win you games as long as you're taking advantage of the uptime it buys you. In comparison, Short Fuse only allows you to sometimes get out of a situation that resulted from a more fundamental issue in your gameplay loop. You should have one rush charge available to escape at all times, and if it's on cooldown while you're fighting and you're relying on the 1.5 second reduced cooldown, you'll find that you'll die way more often than you're able to make it out. And the final sub-role we'll be covering is Sharpshooter. Widowmaker. Minor perks. Scope Deficiency versus Sniper's Instinct. Scope Deficiency. Scope shots cost 3 ammo instead of 5. Sniper's Instinct. Scope shots charge 100% faster for 2 seconds after using Grappling Hook. You should pick Scope Deficiency as you gain 4 extra total shots from 8 to 12, while the other perk is only useful in Widow Mirrors, where you need your charge time to really count. Major perks. Widow's Bite versus Seeker Mine. Widow's Bite. Scope shots can charge up to 125%, piercing enemies when fully charged. Seeker Mine. Venom Mine now fires poison darts at enemies within 10 meters and remains active after triggering. Always pick Widow's Bite, as this perk changes breakpoints for Widow's body shots and headshots, alongside the potential of collateral damage. In comparison, Seeker Mine is less likely to provide consistent value, and barely increases your chances of survivability against mobile characters with its increased radius. Staying up after its initial use usually isn't a factor at play, unless the enemy players are blind to deployables. Wait a minute, actually on second thought. Sojourn. Minor perks. Deceleration Field versus Overcharged. Deceleration Field. Enemies hit by Disruptor Shot are slowed by 25%. Overcharged. Railgun's maximum energy is increased by 50 while Overclock is active. Always pick Overcharged, as it changes breakpoints and makes your rail shot a more consistent one-shot. Deceleration Field is good in theory, and relatively speaking in practice, but Overcharged, more often than not, is of more value. Major perks. Dual Thrusters versus Friction Generators. Dual Thrusters. Power Slide gains an additional charge and its jump height shifts to lateral movement. Friction Generators. While sliding, Power Slide generates up to 50 energy. Always pick dual thrusters. It increases your mobility options to both engage then disengage, makes opening up angles even easier, and means you can pressure enemies on more aggressive angles. Next up, Hanzo. Minor perks. Sonic Disruption versus Dragon's Fury. Sonic Disruption. Sonic Arrow hacks nearby health packs for 30 seconds. Dragon Fury. After hitting an enemy with primary fire, gain 20% attack speed for 1.5 seconds. You should get Sonic Disruptor against enemies that utilize health packs consistently, like Ball, Tracer, Sombra, but in every other case, you should get Dragon's Fury. This is because it increases your DPS output if you land a shot, through the 20% increased attack speed, which will serve to provide more consistent value when you're not playing into characters like Tracer, Sombra, Ball. Major perks. Frost Arrow versus Scatter Arrows. Frost Arrow. Press reload to ready an explosive frost arrow that slows enemies by 35% for 3 seconds. Scatter Arrows. On first ricochet, storm arrows split into 5 shots, dealing 33% damage and bounce 1 extra time. You should get Frost Arrow every single time. Scatter Arrow's re-implementation is fun at best, but that 35% slow for 3 seconds is crazy in every situation, even when compared to Scatter's optimal use case scenarios, where you're able to get maximum value out of it. Frost Arrow beats it out every time. Next up, Cassidy. Minor perks. Bang Bang versus Even the Odds. Bang Bang. Cassidy throws a second flashbang that travels further, but both flashbangs deal 40% reduced damage. Even the Odds. Regenerate 30 health per second for each enemy targeted by Deadeye. I'd recommend picking Bang Bang every single time. It makes flashbang more consistent, and if you hit both, it does almost as much damage as a regular flashbang. The consistency though through this perk is key, as Flash is most valuable for its stun, making it easier for you to finish a target. Major perks. Roll and Roundups versus Silver Bullet. Roll and Roundups. Combat Roll heals 15 health for each bullet reloaded. Silver Bullet. Peacekeeper's secondary fire is increased with a piercing shot that inflicts bleeding. Combat Roll and Deadeye reset its cooldown. Pick Silver Bullet in most cases, as you'll find you get more value out of it throughout a game poking out enemies and consistently bursting down targets. Roll and Roundups you should really only pick if you find yourself getting walked on by the enemy team consistently, mainly the enemy tank, as the regular Fan the Hammer comboed with the 15 healing per bullet reloaded during the roll means he can not only sustain against a tank, but pressure them off, forcing defensive cooldowns, if not outright killing them directly. Ashe. Minor perks. Remote Detonator versus Double Barreled. Remote Detonator. After using Dynamite, pressing ability 2 again causes it to explode after a 0.5 second delay. Double Barreled. Knocking an enemy back with Coach Gun briefly allows it to be used again with 25% reduced knockback. Only pick Remote Detonator if you find it difficult to consistently hit Dynamite in air. Double Barreled in every other instance is a much better perk. It allows you to more consistently survive mobile characters engaging onto you. Major perks. Viper Sting versus Air Burst. Viper Sting. Hitting 2 consecutive scope shots on a target deals 25 extra damage and reloads 1 ammo. Air Burst. Dynamite has a 40% increased detonation radius while airborne and refunds 3 ammo when thrown. Pick Viper Sting if you can consistently hit 2 scope shots as it changes breakpoints. Air Burst, though, is useful if players are more spread out, and it allows for higher uptime as you spend less time reloading shots with the 3 refunded ammo. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this DPS perk video. If you want to support us, please like, comment, and subscribe, or even join our Discord, link in the description below, and we hope to see you in our upcoming videos.